Good morning, and welcome to the ANDICOM. I would like to share with you some of the very important next steps that we in the industry are taking in order to connect the networked society. We have basically spent 100 years over the last century in connecting 1 billion places on this planet. We spent 20 years, more or less, in connecting 5 billion people with telephones, mobilizing the traditional fixed line telephone to become a mobile telephone. And over this decade, we're all working on connecting 50 billion devices and people all over this planet. And we know that this is really changing the life of people. We know that when people get connected, they get better work, they get better social conditions. We have seen the cases from London Business School that shows that for each 10 percentage points that we increase the penetration of mobile broadband, it increases the GDP by another 1 to 1.5% in the areas where people get connected. So for this reason, we are now seeing an increasing demand in terms of industries and people that understands that they can thrive in their business if they get connected. So for that reason, we see that people want to connect themselves. They want to connect the devices. We all have heard, or perhaps we even use, these wearables where we can monitor data about ourselves. But not only people are doing this, industries are doing this as well. Many companies today are understanding that they can increase the efficiency of their business and their operations by introducing connectivities. So it means that connectivity is now becoming an industry application. We are now seeing a huge scale of connectivity. 50 billion devices over the next 5 to 10 years is a very, very large network that requires fundamental change in the technologies on how we connect things. We see that these industries that are becoming connected or digitalized are beginning to transform, just as we saw some examples in the previous presentation here. First of all, we witnessed a huge transformation of the media industry. Today, when we look back, we can see that there are basically no stores where we can buy physical media like CDs and records. Physical books also disappearing totally. But that transformation has not stopped yet. We are right now undergoing a new transformation in the media industry where we are going from download, where we would basically just reflect the physical industry in the digital industry. If you look at Amazon.com, for instance, they started first by distributing physical books on a more efficient manner. The next step they took was to say, now we can distribute digital books. The next steps they're taking is saying that, well, what we really are is a logistics organization. We don't just deliver books, we deliver logistics. So now the new proposition from Amazon is, we will deliver the goods to you in selected cities in, let's say, 1 hour or half an hour, as they are now doing in some areas. So we can see that when we start to connect the industries, they start to transform fundamentally. Who had believed 10 years ago that connectivity and industrialization and connectivity would change the transport industry in the magnitude that we have seen? In the last few months, we have seen even pictures and images that looks like war zones in cities where the traditional transport industry with taxi drivers and chauffeurs and others are fighting against the new transportation industry. where applications and connectivity can intermediate between the real-time need for transport and the offering of transport services. So now connectivity is also transforming fundamentally the transportation industry, not only on taxis, but also on cars, on buses. I will come a bit back to that later. So behind this huge connectivity, this huge scaling of connectivity that the world is undergoing right now, we need to think fundamentally different. We cannot think the same way we did before when we said, let's mobilize the traditional phone. Let's find a technology that can connect mobile devices with high speed and good quality of talk. What we are talking about now is connecting a number of different devices in multiple industries into one network, yes, where everything can communicate together. But all these different devices and these different type of communication will need different standards and have different requirements. So it's going to be one network that will attend the needs of multiple industries. So today, the whole industry, the mobile industry, the industry of connectivity is undergoing a journey of developing the standards that will orchestrate all the different type of access technologies, type of services into one network. So the fifth technology, or the fifth generation of mobile technology, is not just a question of one technology. It's a question of a total new way of orchestrating the networks. And this is what the industry is undergoing right now. This is where Ericsson is contributing significantly in the different standardization bodies all over the world to make sure that we can do the research and developments required in order to make this vision come through and meet the increasing demands that there are in the industry. So what types of requests are this? What type of demands are we then meeting with the research and development that we are doing? Well, first of all, we will see that we will not measure the progress or the additional features that we get from the fifth generation of mobile communication by just increasing the speed, as we have promoted many of the prior generations, like the second generation, the third and the fourth generation, by measuring and communicating regarding the speed that we would have. There are many other requirements that has to be made by this technology. First of all, the data volumes are really going up over this decade here. We will see probably data volumes multiplied by 1,000 measured per device, measured per customer, measured per network throughout this decade here. We also see a steep increase of devices. So today, when we have a base station and an antenna, for instance, where we have connected, let's say, a few thousand users per base station, in a few years, we will have to connect perhaps 100,000, or we will have to count the connections in hundreds of thousands per base station. This means that we need to rethink the concept of connectivity and how many devices that we can attend in the same area or the same cell of mobile communication. There will also be a lot of requirements on having lower latency. We will see a number of mission-critical applications utilizing the fifth generation network. Let's take one example, traffic, for instance. When we will see autonomous cars driving around in the streets, communicating with each other and communicating with the roadside equipment on the streets in the cities, for instance, we need this communication to be fast. And fast does not mean a lot of megabits per second. It means fast in terms of milliseconds from the message is transmitted to it is received on the other party. So the fifth generation of mobile telephony will cut the latency by at least a factor 5. We will of course also see the end user data rates go up. Already today we can see a massive migration of video consumption on mobile devices. I will share some of the numbers with you at the end of my presentation. But what we see is that both the usage is going up. We see that mobile phones today, smartphones and tablets and what have we, is basically equipped with high-definition screens that can consume high-definition video in real time, and we have the technology that can provide it. So this is really driving a very steep uptake in the data volumes for video. But not only that, we also see new types of content. I guess that most of you have heard about these 3G glasses or masks that you can wear. Oculus Rift is one of them. Facebook acquired them and say that they will launch the product sometime next year. But there are also other applications like those where you can have 3G glasses on. In the US today, you will see that the National Basketball Association is already starting to transmit and record basketball games in virtual reality. So you're basically recording 360 degrees in 3 dimensions. So you can imagine that if you wear one of these masks, you will basically be in the place. I could feel like standing in front of you, talking to you if I was having a mask on sitting somewhere else in the world, but I would need to get transmitted all the information of this room here in real time. And it would be presented to me depending on the way that I would look with these masks here. But I need to get all the data, full transmission of 360 degrees in 3 dimensions. Now, today, with the compression technology that we have today, this means that those sessions would be needing a bandwidth of somewhere between 300 to 500 megabits per second. So the same way that it seems a bit unrealistic for me today, thinking about having fixed and even more mobile networks that would be able to handle bandwidth up to half a gigabit per second for virtual reality, real-life transmissions, for instance, like I just mentioned. Well, if I go 10, 15 years back and then think about that today with my mobile phone, with my 4th generation mobile phone, in several cities in Latin America today, I already experience between 50 and 60 megabits per second. I have recorded that on my phone in some cities. 15 years ago, people would think that that would be a bit out of range and not possible. But it is possible today. And we will also have virtual reality transmissions to mobile devices in the future. And the 5th generation of cellular technology will help us with that. Another characteristic that is very important is low power consumption. We will see that wireless technologies will be used to connect sensors in houses, along the roads, many places, different places in cities and rural areas. Sensors will be connected wirelessly simply because it's too expensive to put wires up to connect sensors. But one of the reasons that many sensors today are wired is not because of the transmission that they need these wires for. It's because of the energy consumption that they have. They need energy supplies. So if we can come up with a technology that can cut the consumption of energy significantly so that we can have small batteries that can last 3 to 5 years per sensor, or that can allow that we can have small solar panels like the size of a stamp attached to a sensor, and the energy that that will generate will be sufficiently enough to supply the energy plus doing the wireless transmission with low energy, well, then we can start looking into a much cheaper, a much more viable scenario for having thousands and millions of sensors placed out there in the environment, which is one of the objectives that we see. So I would like to share with you 5 scenarios that we see are some of the basic scenarios for deployment and the utilization of the 5th generation of mobile technology. The first one, as I already mentioned, goes into a broadband everywhere and anytime experience. We have already seen this before. right? We know from big events that the concentration of people that expect to have high quality mobile broadband connectivity is widespread. We saw last year, for instance, in at the Football World Cup, 4 times as much communication from the stadium to the world that we saw, for instance, on the Super Bowl games in the US. So we see an extremely steep growth of communication from these events. So it's sports events, it's music events, it's shows. It's really a question of having broadband access in crowded areas, where broadband access becomes present in public transport, and it really becomes an event platform, so to say. Another use case is smart vehicles and smart infrastructure for traffic that will be a heavy user of the 5th generation of mobile technology. So, as I mentioned before, smart infrastructure, where cars communicate with roadside equipment, where we have buses connected with bus stops. We already did one project in Brazil where we are connecting buses on real time, so people can not only see where the bus, when the next bus comes, because there are GPSs on the bus that transmit their position real time. You also have possibility of doing electronic online ticketing. You have surveillance systems and panic buttons in the bus also that are real time, so you increase a lot the level of safety that you have in these areas. Connected lorries and trucks is also a very important component when companies begin to put all their production and logistics systems online. So it means that you will have real-time rerouting, you will have real-time delivery of goods, pickup of goods with connected trucks that can not only monitor the goods and the payload that you have, but also the route that you are on. Ericsson made a project together with the world's largest container transporting company, Maersk, 2 years ago, and today all their 400 ships worldwide are equipped with systems that connects all the containers, and we are talking about 15 to nearly 20,000 containers on the largest ships that are all connected so that the companies, their customers, can monitor and actually control the environment of the goods that they are shipping. We know today that some companies is using this, for instance, to control the temperature and humidity in the containers for when they sell fruits like bananas in Europe, so that all the goods is mature and can be sent directly to the supermarkets when they arrive in Europe. So by this, actually Maersk, they went out of the transporting business to also include warehousing business. So their customers today are actually cutting down on warehouses in Europe, and they're using the ships as warehouses also. So these are kind of real-time warehouse where all the goods is moving around and where they can control the different environments that they have. Another very important case for the 5th generation of mobile technology is where we control remote areas or remote control of machines. This is something that is very essential, and we made this year at the Mobile World Conference in Barcelona, we had a demonstration of remote control of an excavator. So basically you could sit in a chair, a command chair of an excavator, you could put your 3-dimensional glasses on, and you would be sitting in the control seat of an excavator somewhere in Sweden, for instance. You could just look around you, and you could control the machine in real time using 5G over this long distance. So a number of the advantages that we see coming up here is that we'll be able to remote control heavy machineries. I mean, this has huge advantage when it comes to taking people out of hazardous areas. Factory automation is also a part of this. I got contact last month with 2 companies in Denmark that are working with a very interesting vision, actually, which is that there are more cubic meters than square meters in most production plants today. So what they are working on is what we could call flying robots. And flying robots, or drones as we call them, is now inserted into a vision where they would use the space above our heads to do logistics operation within a production facility. Now, you need reliable, fast, and high-quality wireless communication in order for this scenario to become reality, right? Otherwise, there are serious security aspects and safety aspects that goes into that. Smart grid networks, also very essential, where you can balance the contribution and the consumption of energy in intelligent networks are very important also. Another type of use cases is human interaction with the Internet of Things. As I mentioned in the beginning, many people today wear different types of gadgets and devices where they can measure the status of their own body and their whereabouts. People are starting to measure the exercises, how much they move during the day, and they can now start to do what some people call biohacking in order of changing their behaviors to become more healthy. And we all know that when you put numbers on that, it's much easier to behave well because we can see how many steps we take per day, for instance. So quantifying the numbers about ourselves is very, very motivating for many people. But not only that, coming back to the immersive experience that you can give people when you give them a mask, where they would be able to enter into virtual reality, for instance, is also something that already now is possible. The first devices are there, and next year we will see even more of this technology coming out. But also monitoring of persons, kids, smart bike helmets we see begin to come out now that can warn bikers on different type of hazards that there might be ahead when they're riding. They can interact together with cars also, so both the cars and the bikers would get alerts when if they approach each other on crossing roads, for instance, is very, very important. So all in all, what we see is that these technologies will increase the utilization of the Internet of Things. And what do we understand by the Internet of Things? We understand basically the connectivity of the physical world with the virtual or the networked world, right? All these sensors and actuators that will connect those two sides, that will help us gather data and also deliver actions back to the environment in which we implement this is what we can understand by the Internet of Things. So what we build here, when we combine cloud services together with the fifth generation of mobile communication, is that you get information gathered and the networks become aware. So it's not just one machine communicating to each other. This is not just machine-to-machine communication as we have sometimes referred to it, but this is actually context-aware networks and applications where you can start connecting industries together. One very interesting application of this that I saw the other day was in Germany, where some applications start to gather on connected cars, start to gather information on the window wipers, the cleaners for the windows, when it was raining, how much they were operating, in which area, and at what speed. This was a way to monitor rain, for instance. So it's once again, it's an opportunity that you have to cross data from one industry to the other, and where you can build new types of applications or mashups, as some people call them, in order to generate new value. The last case that I would like to share with you is regarding what we could call the media everywhere experience. So what we are seeing today, and I will give you a few examples of that, is a massive migration of media consumption to mobile devices, already ongoing now. It means that people expect to be able now to have connections to live TV on their mobile devices. It means that any type of media today is expected to be able to be delivered at any place and any time. It also means that there is actually an expectation for being wireless with your mobile screen even in your home today. So even TV is now becoming disconnected in the sense that we are plugging it out of the wall and expecting it to be just working whatever we turn it on at any time, at any place. So what we will see now is that mobile transmission, or wireless transmission, will attend to the needs that we see not only for high definition transmission, as we already see it on mobile phone today, right? But we will see 4K, so like 4 times the definition that we see with high definition, 8K, we will see high dynamic range, we will see high frame rate also. All these new technologies being implemented and transmitted over wireless technologies going forward. So what are the bases for this migration, and what does this actually mean here in Colombia? It actually happens to be today that Ericsson is releasing the data for TV and media consumption in Colombia. It's part of a global framework that we have where we release these numbers every year. It's part of the Ericsson Consumer Lab team, and we have a group of them working with me actually here in Latin America. We do globally more than 100,000 interviews every year in more than 40 countries. And today we are releasing the numbers that we have for TV and media, as I mentioned, for Colombia. And I would like to share with you just a few highlights of that research that shows how far we actually are coming in the utilization, the take-up, and migration of media consumption here. One of the things that I thought was interesting drawing out here is that today, when we looked at the connected teenagers, so teenagers that has access to broadband services at home, they already spend more than half, 55% of their media consumption time. The consumption time of TV and video is now on mobile devices. So we have now crossed, you can say, the midway, where these people are spending more time looking at TV and video on their mobile devices than they're doing on the traditional screen. Now, when we look at the whole population from 16 to 59 years in Colombia today that have broadband connectivities at home, we see that this average is actually also very high, higher than I had expected. It's 50% of the time. So today, overall, connected people in Colombia overall spend now half of their time, and teenagers 55% of their time on mobile devices. And we see this actually accelerating significantly, because what I also observed, and I would like to share that number with you, is that today actually 70% of those consumers watch TV on their smartphones. And if you compare to the numbers that I picked up from 2012, I see that this represents an increase of 190% over this 3-year period in Colombia. So right now we are undergoing a significant migration from traditional TV viewing to mobile TV viewing here. And I can assure you that this is only the beginning. This migration will really be massive over the coming years, and the demand on the networks, we will also be able to monitor them as we see this migration going onwards. What we see is that 60% of the people that we researched here believe that it is not just important, but it is very important for them to be able to watch their TVs and videos wherever they are. This is a part of a global trend that we see. When we look back in the 70s, people were in average looking at television about 15 to 16 hours a week. Today, we are crossing on average between 40 and 44 hours a week of video being watched. We believe that within the next 5 years, these numbers will increase to roughly 50 hours of video per week. So what we can say is that with the internet and with connectivity, TV has become an even more successful media than it is before. However, it is a new type of TV. It is a new type of media. You can say that TV is escaping from a traditional TV set. It is escaping from the home also, because people now start to watch videos wherever they are, when they move around in public transport, when they are at work, when they are at other friends, perhaps together with friends in other places. We also see that one of the results here that I think is interesting is that on average globally, 36% of connected subscribers, they change place or do place shifting, as we call it, during, for instance, when they watch a video or film. What does that mean? It means that they start at home, looking on the big screen, then they have to go, they shut it off, they go to the bus, the car, whatever they are, and at some other place they continue to see the rest of the movie or the TV series that they started seeing at home. So 36% of people doing this globally. But in Latin America, it is as high as 44% of users doing that. Right? So we see even a higher degree of people actually consuming media in alternating devices at least once a week. And actually half of those 44%, or actually at least 1/3 of those 44%, does it once a day. So with that, I would like to end my presentation just by saying that those of you that are interested in more of the data in this Ericsson Mobility Lab report, we will release it. We're releasing it today. On the 8th of September, we will have a webinar. You can go into the Ericsson page for Latin America, and you can find the data for joining us on the webinar on the 8th. And of course, if you're interested in going through these data and looking on the result for Colombia in the context of Latin America, you are very welcome to contact me. Thank you very much for your attention.